Okay, you guys, here we are. We're ready to move on with our cake. So the next thing we're going to do is work on a buttercream frozen transfer picture for this Pokemon cake that we're working on. So let me just show you what we're talking about here. So this is what we're talking about. I have this picture here of the Pokemon that was chosen for the cake, and I have this reference for my colorings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my frosting, and I'm going to start with the black and just go with an outline around the whole thing and then fill it in with the different colors depending on where they are on the picture. So what I have is I have a print off picture that's just black and white, and I taped it to my pan. I'm going to take some wax paper and just put it over top, and what we're going to do is just tape it down so that it won't go anywhere, and that it will ensure that it will stay the same place on our tracing. So I'm going to start with the black. Okay, so here's the finished thing after all the black. We just went and filled in everything around all the outlines, and now I kind of went through and I kind of like, just touched down some of the parts that were poking up. And now what we're going to do is just put it in the freezer for about 15 minutes, and then we'll continue the process of adding each color. And after each color, we will do the same thing. We'll add it into the freezer for like 15 minutes, then do another color, add it into the freezer for 15 minutes, do another color. It's repetitive. You get the point. So as you can see, we are just about done with this dragon. We just have a few more things, just a little blue here and a little red dot into his eye. So we're just gonna add that into him right now. There, that's pretty easy. Now just his red little dot in his eye. There we go. All right, so it doesn't look so great now, but what we're going for is what is underneath all of this. So now I'm just going to pop it back into the freezer, and when we're ready to transfer onto the cake, we'll just pull it back out. So here is our final dragon, and since we're going to be adding him onto the cake today, what I'm going to do while I'm carving the cake is I'm going to take just a base color and just fill in the whole thing full of this base color to give him a nice foundation so that he'll transfer nicely onto the cake. So I went ahead and filled it all in with this base gray color, and now what I'm going to do is just take my knife. I'm just going to kind of flatten it out, along all the edges here. And this is going to make sure that we have a nice level piece to transfer down, and everything will transfer smooth. And then we're going to put it back in the freezer. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to unwrap them and just work on torting them. So torting them is making this layer thinner by cutting it in half so that we can put some filling inside of it. And these cakes I got out just a few minutes ago so that they're not completely thawed out, because they're easier to work with when they're a little bit frozen and a little less intimidating because they hold together a lot better. So, and it's okay, you're going to have crumbs, but we're going to take care of that. So we're just going to unwrap these, and we're going to tort them. So we're going to fill them, make these layers thinner, and then we're going to shape them into the shape that we need for this. So for this Pokemon cake, the shape I need is kind of like a half sphere for that Pokemon ball that we're doing. And so what I'm going to do is I'll just go ahead and I have a bunch of knives here, so I just take my longest knife and I just kind of find middle and cut it all the way in half. Well, don't worry if it's not perfectly in half, it's cake. It's just going to get eaten. I think people stress a lot with cakes. Now just go kind of slow, because it will tear apart if you are a little too rough, because it is frozen. So just kind of, take your time going through it. Slice it nice and carefully. Don't worry about all the crumbs that are coming off the edge, because we're just going to trim all that off anyways, because we need that ball shape. So most of this is going to come off, but it'll turn out. It'll turn out nice. And these bigger ones, when I'm torting them, I kind of spin them around. I don't just go all the way through like I did the little ones. So I kind of spin them around and then just kind of work in like a circle as I'm cutting them in half, and it just seems to be a little easier. Then you just take a little bit at a time to do it. So we want to tort these first before we start carving them, because it's a lot easier to tort when they're a little bit more frozen. So now I'm just going to stack them because that's kind of the shape I need. And I'm just going to start to just kind of carving it down. You're going to have a lot of extra cake that's coming off this, but just save it for your family. That's like the best part. My kids love that part of whenever I have to make a cake. Can we have the crumbs? Can we have the extras? So I'm just going to start just cutting it down. Okay, so we've got our basic round shape that we're going for. And now what we're going to do is we're going to fill the cakes. So I'm going to take them apart and just kind of separate them from where I had torted them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill in some frosting around the outside. Otherwise, our raspberry filling is what Carly Stiles had picked for Cooper. She thought that this would be a nice, fun flavor to try, and absolutely one of my favorites, I must say. So we don't want that to leak all over the outside of the cake, so we're just going to put a round, just a big round tip, and we're just going to squirt it around the whole outside of the cake. This way, that raspberry filling won't come out and leak all over, because that makes it hard for the frosting on the outside and for the fondant and stuff. So we're just going to do a little bit of that and scrape some raspberry filling into the inside of it. Some fresh raspberry filling. Just scoop this on in here. Ooh, it smells so good. I wish you guys could smell this. It is amazing. I love raspberries. Oh, it just makes me want to eat this cake already. It's for Cooper, remember? Okay, so there we go. We got that one. Okay, now we're just going to keep continuing to do what we're doing. There we go. Okay, so now what we're going to work on is we're going to put this cake onto a pan. I have a cookie sheet here that we're going to, with a piece of wax paper. And what I want to do is just put it onto this pan with the wax paper, and we're going to frost the whole outside to give us a nice layer, and then we're going to stick it in the freezer to make sure that everything can be easy to work with again. So it's kind of a cone shape, but it's all right. So I'm just going to start frosting this cake all over, just a thin layer. And this is called a crumb coat, so it doesn't matter if the crumbs come through this layer, because we will cover it up with a little bit more frosting after it freezes. And then we will also be covering it up with some fondant, some homemade marshmallow fondant, which is so much yummier than just regular store-bought fondant. And it's so easy, and it's really cheap to make. And that's kind of what we go for when we make cakes, cheap and easy. We like cheap and easy, you guys. So just, I mean, really, just do a thin layer and just go over that whole entire cake. It's been in the freezer, and now what we're going to do is just put on a little bit more frosting on the outside, and then we'll lay on a layer of fondant. This will help get rid of like some of the crumbs that may have shown through the frosting on the first layer, but it will also help the fondant lay smooth. Now, I'm just going to leave my cake sitting there. Oops. All right, don't drop your spatula. So now what I'm going to do is work on my marshmallow fondant. So first thing you want to start with is just, I like to use shortening, so I'm just going to put some shortening on my counter to roll it out, and that way the fondant won't stick. And then we're just going to work on rolling our fondant out as big as we can to lay over the top of the cake. This will help us to, so here's our fondant. The bigger the pieces, the better, because it's so hard once you just kind of want to roll it out for a minute or two, get it kind of warm. But do it bigger than you think you need, because it's so hard to get under fondant and pull it off because you didn't get enough, and add more in, and because you get the frosting stuck to it, and then it's no good, and so it's just really hard. So I always just like to do more than I need, better safe than sorry. So now you just kind of work, I like to work with it with my hands for a little bit, just trying to push it out before I actually use the rolling pin. It's just easier that way, I think, for me. But you guys, do what you feel is most comfortable. Everybody's different. Everybody has their own ideas and everything, so we're just gonna, okay, so this is gonna be really big for our cake, so I'm just gonna pull some of this off and save it for later. All right. I think this is gonna be a really, really big piece, but it's kind of what we got. All right. So I'm just gonna start rolling this out. Just kind of go from the middle. If you get some air bubbles, might be because it's too thin in one spot. So just start from like the middle and like work your way out on all sides, trying to make it even.